Today I would like to invite you to listen to the Dhammapada of the Buddha Shakyamuni, the 135th verse from the Buddhist scriptures on the YouTube channel Thien Thai in the USA. As with a staff the herdsman drives his kind to pasture, even so do old age and death drive out the lives of beings. This verse arose from a true story observed by the Buddha in which a community of laypeople and monks were confronted with the reality of loss and the passing of friends, family, and elders. They witnessed the sudden collapse of vitality in those who had long been active, the slow fading of life in the elderly, and the ultimate departure of all beings from this world. Some grieved, clung, or sought to deny the inevitability of death, while others began to cultivate understanding and acceptance through mindfulness and insight. The Buddha, seeing the suffering caused by attachment and ignorance, spoke this verse to illuminate the natural law governing all living beings. Just as a herdsman guides his kine with a staff to pasture, so too does old age, sickness, and death move all beings inevitably toward the end of their physical existence. This truth is universal. No wealth, status, or power can prevent the approach of old age and death. The teaching reminds disciples that life is impermanent, that clinging to the body and worldly gains only invites suffering, and that insight into the inevitability of change is a doorway to liberation. Awareness of mortality encourages reflection, ethical conduct, and the cultivation of wisdom and compassion, allowing one to live meaningfully, to act skillfully, and to prepare the mind for freedom beyond the cycles of birth and death. The Buddha's teaching in this verse invites us to contemplate the impermanent nature of all conditioned existence. Everything born is subject to aging, decay, and dissolution. The body, which carries the mind through life, is not exempt from this natural law. From the moment of conception to the final breath, all beings move along the path shaped by birth, aging, sickness, and death. Just as a herdsman cannot force the kine to remain in one place indefinitely, nor can any being resist the course of impermanence. Reflection on this reality is not meant to evoke despair, but to awaken mindfulness. When one sees the inevitability of old age and death clearly, one becomes aware of the preciousness of each moment. Time, which is fleeting and irretrievable, becomes a teacher, urging careful attention to speech, action, and thought. The Buddha encourages this reflection to transform grief, fear, and denial into insight, awareness, and acceptance. Understanding that all beings are subject to old age and death fosters compassion for others, as we recognize that all share the same fate. It fosters equanimity, as we learn to relate to loss without being overwhelmed. And it fosters diligence in practice, as awareness of impermanence motivates the cultivation of wisdom, ethical conduct, and meditative concentration that prepare the mind for freedom from suffering. The metaphor of the herdsman and the kine is profound in its simplicity. The herdsman does not harm the animals as he drives them. He guides them with care, directing them toward nourishment and safety. Similarly, old age and death do not arise out of cruelty or malice. They are natural forces inherent in existence. The Buddha's comparison invites us to recognize the inevitability of these processes without resistance or delusion. By understanding their impartiality, we can release fear, resentment, and attachment that often accompany thoughts of mortality. Observing the body and mind as transient, We learn to cherish the present moment while maintaining perspective. Actions taken in mindfulness and compassion, now that we recognize the brevity of life, become more meaningful. Time, energy, and attention are directed toward wholesome deeds, towards the cultivation of insight and understanding, and towards the care and support of other beings. Just as the herdsman ensures the kine reach good pasture, awareness of impermanence allows the practitioner to guide the mind toward skillful states, toward the nurturing of wisdom, and toward the protection of life from harm. In addition, this verse teaches that understanding mortality is essential to ethical living. When we forget that life is fleeting, we may act carelessly, pursue selfish gains, or harm others in pursuit of pleasure or security. Awareness of old age and death tempers desire, attachment, and pride. It encourages reflection on the consequences of actions and fosters the cultivation of restraint, generosity, and compassion. By keeping mortality in mind, we are less likely to cling to the ephemeral and more likely to cultivate qualities that endure beyond the life of the body. This insight is central to the Buddha's teaching on karma, as it reminds us that each action has consequences that shape the mind, character, and future experiences. Living with mindfulness of impermanence transforms the way we relate to ourselves, to others, and to the world. It supports the development of patience, understanding, and wisdom. The mind that sees the inevitability of aging and death does not despair, nor does it indulge in reckless attachment. Instead, it practices ethical living, cultivates insight, and nurtures compassion, preparing the path for awakening. The contemplation of old age and death also nurtures spiritual urgency and diligence. When the impermanence of life is clear, procrastination, distraction, and complacency are recognized as threats to the cultivation of wisdom. The Buddha taught that life is uncertain and the body and mind are fragile. Just as the herdsman cannot stop the movement of the kine, we cannot halt the progress of aging or prevent death. Each day, each breath, each moment presents an opportunity to practice awareness, to cultivate virtue, and to deepen understanding. Spiritual diligence arises naturally from the recognition that life is temporary and that the mind must be trained to awaken before old age, sickness, or death makes practice more difficult. This awareness encourages meditation, reflection, ethical conduct, and compassionate action, ensuring that every moment is used skillfully for the benefit of self and others. Through this practice, the fear of death diminishes, grief is transformed into insight, and the mind rests steadily in clarity, equanimity, and compassion. The Buddha's teaching also emphasizes that mindfulness of impermanence is inseparable from compassion. When we understand that all beings are subject to aging, sickness, and death, we develop empathy for the suffering of others. We see that grief, fear, and loss are universal experiences. This insight encourages the cultivation of patience, care, and gentle action in relation to others. Just as the herdsman attends to the kine with skill and concern, the practitioner develops attentiveness and compassion toward all beings, recognizing their vulnerability and impermanence. Such mindfulness fosters ethical conduct, non-harm, and generosity, creating harmony within the community and peace within the mind. By contemplating impermanence, the practitioner learns to act skillfully in every interaction, to speak kindly, to avoid causing suffering, and to nurture the growth of virtue and wisdom in oneself and others. The Buddha's teaching on impermanence, as expressed in this verse, also invites us to consider the body and mind as vessels subject to change, dissolution, and eventual departure. Just as the herdsman does not possess ultimate control over the kine, but guides them skillfully toward nourishment, so too are we guided by the natural law of impermanence, aging, and death. No amount of wealth, status, or attachment can prevent the inevitability of time. The body grows fragile, the senses dull, and the mind experiences limitations that cannot be escaped. Recognition of this truth is not meant to invoke despair, but to cultivate clarity, mindfulness, and deliberate practice. When the impermanence of life is deeply understood, the mind becomes alert, attentive, and sensitive to the present moment. Each breath, each action, each thought takes on new meaning. Ethical living becomes a natural consequence of this awareness. Careful attention to speech, conduct, and thought is not a burden, but a way to honor the preciousness of life and the inevitability of change. Awareness of mortality encourages us to act skillfully, to nurture virtues, and to cultivate wisdom before old age, sickness, or death overtakes the opportunities for practice. This reflection transforms fear and attachment into insight and freedom. By seeing clearly that old age and death will eventually come, the mind turns toward the Dharma naturally, seeking liberation, cultivating compassion, and releasing clinging to the transient and impermanent. Through this practice, life becomes a field of awakening rather than a source of anxiety or illusion. Furthermore, the verse teaches the importance of reflection on cause and effect in relation to mortality. As the herdsman drives the kine, life itself carries beings along toward old age and death. No action can halt this process, yet the quality of one's actions shapes the experiences of mind along the way. The Buddha emphasized that while aging and death are unavoidable, the manner in which one lives cultivates awareness, and practices virtue profoundly influences the mind's freedom and clarity in the face of impermanence. Mindfulness, ethical conduct, and meditation nurture calmness, discernment, and equanimity, allowing the mind to approach the inevitable with dignity and insight. Each act of generosity, kindness, and moral integrity enriches the consciousness, providing stability and support when the body weakens and the senses fail. By recognizing that old age and death are inevitable, the practitioner becomes diligent in cultivating wholesome qualities that endure beyond the body. In this way, awareness of impermanence does not lead to hopelessness, but to spiritual vigilance, ethical refinement, and compassionate engagement with the world. The mind becomes steady, unshaken by fear of loss, grief, or decay, and finds peace in the cultivation of understanding and virtue. The Buddha also invites reflection on the interconnection between impermanence and the cultivation of wisdom. When the mind recognizes that all beings are subject to aging, illness, and death, it begins to perceive the transient nature of all phenomena more clearly. Clinging to the body, to material possessions, to reputation, and to power is seen as a source of unnecessary suffering. Insight into impermanence encourages detachment, not as cold renunciation, but as understanding that all conditioned things are fleeting and cannot provide lasting security or happiness. The mind becomes alert and discerning, able to prioritize the cultivation of wisdom, compassion, and ethical conduct above fleeting desires or attachments. By contemplating the inevitability of old age and death, the practitioner gains clarity regarding what is truly important: the training of the mind, the cultivation of virtues, the practice of insight, and the care of all beings. Just as the herdsman guides the kind skillfully toward nourishment, mindfulness of impermanence guides the mind toward liberation, ensuring that each moment is invested in understanding, clarity, and the reduction of suffering. Additionally, the verse encourages a compassionate perspective toward others. The universality of aging and death means that all beings share vulnerability and the inevitability of loss. Awareness of this truth cultivates empathy, patience, and care. We see that grief, fear, and uncertainty arise not only in ourselves, but in all who live. And this insight naturally motivates us to act with kindness, understanding, and gentleness. Ethical and compassionate action is strengthened when impermanence is understood, because we recognize the urgency of using our time wisely to benefit ourselves and others. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to nurture harmony, alleviate suffering, and practice generosity. Just as the herdsman ensures the safety and nourishment of the kine, we ensure the well-being of others by cultivating awareness, compassion, and virtue. Through these practices, mindfulness of impermanence is not a source of sorrow, but a foundation for ethical living, spiritual growth, and the awakening of insight into the nature of life and death. The contemplation of old age and death also fosters equanimity in the face of suffering and change. Life is filled with uncertainty, and clinging to permanence in people, possessions, or circumstances leads to frustration and distress. The Buddha teaches that the mind trained in awareness of impermanence experiences a balance, observing the arising and passing of phenomena without becoming entangled or disturbed. By seeing clearly that old age, sickness, and death are natural and universal, we learn to respond to change with calm, clarity, and understanding. This equanimity is not indifference. It is the ability to remain steady and present in the face of life's inevitable transformations. It nurtures patience, resilience, and compassion, enabling the practitioner to act skillfully, support others, and cultivate inner freedom. Through this understanding, the fear of loss diminishes, grief is transformed into insight, and the mind rests peacefully even amidst impermanence. As this teaching gently comes to its conclusion, we allow the Buddha's words on impermanence, old age, and death to settle fully within our hearts. Life moves in its natural course, guided by the forces of birth, aging, illness, and death, as surely as the herdsman drives the kine to pasture. This is not a punishment nor an enemy to resist. It is the way of all conditioned things. When the mind sees this clearly, fear, clinging, and attachment naturally diminish, giving rise to acceptance, clarity, and insight. The body, once vigorous, grows fragile. Loved ones, once present, may depart. Circumstances change. Nothing lasts. Yet, in the awareness of impermanence, the mind discovers freedom. By contemplating the inevitability of old age and death, the practitioner becomes vigilant, compassionate, and mindful. Each day, each breath, each action becomes precious, urging ethical conduct, generosity, and wisdom. The mind is prepared for the inevitability of change, and in this preparedness, Nibbana begins to unfold even amidst life. Through reflection on impermanence, the practitioner cultivates equanimity and compassion simultaneously. We see that all beings share the same destiny. All are subject to aging, sickness, and death. This insight softens the heart and encourages patience, understanding, and care. We act kindly and speak wisely, knowing that the lives of others are as fleeting and precious as our own. The fear of loss is tempered by the cultivation of insight, and grief transforms into awareness. The inevitability of death no longer paralyzes the mind with despair, but awakens it to the urgency of living skillfully. Each interaction, each opportunity to practice generosity, ethical conduct, and mindfulness becomes a chance to nurture both personal liberation and the well-being of others. Just as the herdsman guides his kind carefully and without haste, we learn to guide our lives with awareness, steadiness, and compassion, ensuring that each moment is used wisely in preparation for the inevitability of our own mortality. The Buddha's teaching reminds us that impermanence is both a challenge and a gift. It challenges us to face the reality of change with courage and clarity. It frees us from illusions that cause suffering and strengthens our commitment to the path of liberation. By contemplating old age and death, we are motivated to cultivate virtues, deepen wisdom, and practice compassion. Life becomes a field for awakening, where every moment of mindfulness, every act of kindness, and every ethical choice contributes to freedom from suffering. The mind, trained in awareness of impermanence, rests in clarity, balance, and serenity. It is unshaken by loss, resilient in the face of change, and compassionate toward all beings who share in the experience of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Let us hold this teaching in our hearts as we live each day with awareness of its truth. Let the impermanence of all things awaken diligence, mindfulness, and compassion. Let the inevitability of old age and death remind us to speak kindly, act wisely, and cultivate virtue. In this way, the mind experiences freedom even before the final breath, and the practice of the Dharma becomes alive in every moment of our lives. By seeing clearly the law of impermanence, we prepare ourselves for liberation, nurturing wisdom, serenity, and compassion, while bringing benefit to ourselves and all beings. Thank you for watching my video. Namo Amitabha. I wish to bring this merit towards all disciples and sentient beings, all of whom will attain Buddhahood. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate your time.